everyone, welcome to the 200th episode of Get Jasched. I am your host, Jess, and this is truly wild. This is actually something that when the 100th episode came and went, it was a bit of a non-event. I don't remember even when that was. I knew it was a thing. But 200 feels a little different in a good way, but a little different because 200 episodes is a massive deal. It's a big deal. But before I get into that, very quickly, another reminder, the Get Jasched Meditation Plus podcast subscription is available. Every Thursday you get a brand new guided mindfulness or meditation practice for you to follow, and it is only an itty bitty monthly subscription amount to access the full library for as long as you've got the subscription. So I will include the link in the details below if you want to check that out. That is less of me yapping like this, unless it's educational, strictly educational, not me just ad-libbing the way I do, and more of the actual experience, the facilitated experience. So that is there. The other reminder is on Friday morning, the 24th of April. So when this comes out, it'll be next Friday in Brisbane City. I'm hosting a 3-hour workshop for business owners, leaders, directors called Regulated Leaders, Resilient Teams. And it is for you to learn in a business leadership context, the language of nervous system and how you communicate and in stress and how that can impact you, and then have takeaways that you can take with you for you, but also take with you for your team. So again, I'll include the link in the details below, but that is on Friday morning, the 24th of April from 9:30 to 12:30. And it's going to be really, really good. And it's limited to 14 spots. And some of those spots have already been taken, so get your registration in. But beyond that, let's get into the celebrations of 200 episodes. 200 episodes, almost 6 years. If my maths is mathing, which it is, because it's not that hard. I started this entire podcast in, must be June, someone will fact check me, but in the midst of 2020, in the midst of the COVID-19 lockdown. And I remember sitting where I lived at the time, out the front, having breakfast with Stormy, my dog, and pondering, as I was and am wont to do, and really just sitting there going, I just want to talk to more people. And it wasn't necessarily I want to talk to more people to do sales. I mean, that's always helpful, but it was just I just want to talk to more people. I want to yap, but I want to have real conversations. I don't want to do small talk. So regardless of COVID, I'd never want to do small talk. But I don't want to do small talk. I just want to have real conversations with people. And I really want to utilize this skill of interviewing, of leading and guiding and inquiring into these conversations. So that's how it began. It was I guess I'm going to start a podcast. It wasn't, I'm sure indirectly it was, but it wasn't, a direct response to lockdown and the pandemic. It wasn't like, oh, what else am I going to do? Because I was busy enough as it was, you guys. That was not, look, it wasn't a great time for many people, but it was not one of those times where I didn't have anything to do. Because of the work I do, because it's in well-being, and because it can be online, I actually found myself busier at that point than I had been at that point in my entire career. And I was very grateful for that, but it wasn't just from a lack of things to do. It wasn't necessarily from a place of trying to pivot and innovate. It was really just from this place of, this is what I desire. This is really what I desire, because my business towards the end of 2019 was already on its, I hate to use this word, but it was already on a pivot. It was already on its way to being on a pivot. So this was a natural follow-on, and I'm really glad I did it. So today I have 6 lessons, random arbitrary number. If I think of more, I might come back with a part 2. Who the fuck knows? But I have 6 lessons from what I have learnt, 6 things I have learnt from 200 podcast episodes. Or, here it is. Or 6 things from 6 years. There we go. There's a link. There's a connection there. Thank God I needed that pattern. So I have 6 things that I wanted to share with you that I've learned. And this could be things in wellness or well-being for yourself, like how you approach things, or it could be things in business, whatever. Let's see. Number 1, don't overthink it. Coming from a contender, at least, for the world's biggest overthinker sometimes, don't overthink it. I just explained how this podcast came about. Miraculously, all I did was follow the nudge. Literally, I was sitting there having breakfast. It was early in the morning. I remember that. And it must have been in winter, so it would have been in June or in the lead up to June. And so I remember the weather. It was a lovely, cool weather. I'm so much more creative, by the way. It's April now. I'm delighted because the weather is starting to turn. It doesn't turn all that much where I live, but starting to turn. And I feel more creative, but just don't overthink the nudge. If you get the nudge, try to just follow the nudge. Same with naming it. And this was similar to my business names, the first iteration, and then also when I rebranded into J-Leigh. It's really easy to overthink that. And I'm not saying I'm like a naming, branding, marketing, whatever expert at all. But when it came to this creative project, which is essentially what this is, I have not made any direct money from the podcast directly itself. I've met people who have in some way led me to clients, but I haven't made any direct money from the podcast itself until I released the subscription podcast. A month ago? But naming it didn't need to be overthought. Naming it didn't need to be overthought. All I needed to do was follow the nudge. And when I thought of the podcast, I went, cool. I asked myself, what would I call it? It's like I left it as an open-ended question rather than I don't know what to call it. See how that's closed-ended? I left it open. I said, what would I call it? And Get Jasched, I may have explained this a long time ago if I have. Get Jasched is actually a throwback to a joke that I am sorry, it is a private joke. I'll share it, but like, you know how people have all these private jokes that they make public and it doesn't make sense to anyone, but it's a throwback to a joke with former housemates of mine where, because my last name is Jash, where we would be sitting around yapping as you do when you're in your 20s, and inadvertently they would end up asking me for advice, and I would maybe give that advice or ask certain questions that help them reflect, just as a housemate, just as a friend. But we made the joke that it was called Getting Jasched because it was a certain approach of housemate therapy that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to who have ever lived with people that they enjoy enough to speak to, at least. And that's really where it came from, because I knew that this podcast was going to be a lot of me yapping. I wanted it to be a lot of other people yapping with me as well. And it was potentially, going to be full of, I was going to say unsolicited advice, but look, if you listen to it, then it's not necessarily unsolicited, is it? So that's the not overthinking. The name came to me. I knew that it wasn't, look, it's not necessarily going to be a name that's going to get caught up in people's natural searches for something else, but here we are. And I can't imagine calling it anything else, because it is still true to form, and it's still unique and still has my flavor on it, I guess. So I didn't overthink it. And also, I made sure I wasn't just following the bright, shiny object, because there are a lot of people, myself included, but a lot of people who might see a creative project and go, oh, I need that. I need to do that. And it's this bright, shiny object of, I need that in order to do this. I need that in order to succeed. I don't believe that was the thought process or the belief I had when I was creating this. Maybe I thought it would be helpful. I still kind of do, but I wasn't like, oh, I need a podcast in order to succeed. It was just I desire to do this because of this. So it wasn't this bright, shiny object that I was trying to follow to solve all my problems. This podcast, it hasn't created problems, but it hasn't lightened my load, like it has only added things to do in my week in terms of editing. I don't call myself a producer because I'm not, but I'm the one who gets it out there. And while I've streamlined that as best I can in steps, my point is, it's not necessarily the thing that's solving everything. It's something I enjoy doing, and I really enjoy having this resource out there for people, and I really enjoy what it allows me to do in terms of having conversations that I want to have, that I think are important based on my skills and expertise. So number one, don't overthink it, whatever it is. Number two, second, well, maybe not in this order, but in general, number two out of things I've learned, use what you can to connect. Like I said, I started this during COVID. I don't love networking events, and I wasn't necessarily, there wasn't any intention in terms of expectation. It was just this desire to connect and a desire to build my network, build my professional network, because at that time I had been in business for 4 years. Yes. I had been in business for 4 years, which meant I'd been out of the direct corporate world for 3 years, and at that time, and I missed having more ease in people knowing me because of my work, which happens a lot more easily when you are in employment in that kind of world. So I wanted to build my network, but I didn't want it to be transactional in that sense. I just want it to be about connection. So use what you can to connect. This one's actually going to be a short one, I guess. Use what you can to connect. Allow it to be what it is, but also use things to connect. It's okay to connect. It's okay to let it be what it is. We don't always have to connect for sales. We don't always have to connect for things. But yes, there's definitely times and circumstances where connecting is useful when you have an intention. But it's okay to, this is what I learned, it's okay to just find ways to connect with people that are more comfortable for you as well, because it has made it so much easier for me to approach people, especially strangers, right? on LinkedIn, which is how I've gotten some of my guests on LinkedIn, approaching them when it's not about selling them anything, when it's about, I want to have a conversation with you, and I want to also respect people's time. And I feel like, can we have a coffee catch up to pick your brain, is not a respectful approach to people's time. As lovely as the idea is, that is valuable time. So I guess the way I see or saw the podcast and see it is they get something out of it because they get to have maybe a resource that they can share with their people or their network, but it's also just an opportunity to connect. So that's what I learned. That's the number 2 that I learned. Number 3, I have my notes because I wanted to make sure that I stayed on track for you. Consistency doesn't always have to mean doing the same thing. So if you're quick to do the maths on things, you might have already gone, 200 episodes in 6 years. How does that calculate? That's not weekly, but it's also not fortnightly. Good question. So consistency doesn't always have to mean doing the same thing. What does consistency even mean? Consistency is showing up and allowing yourself to be flexible and adapting it to your needs as you need to, which is what I did. This podcast, let me recall, it started out as an interview only podcast. So it started out with only being interviews, for starters, with other people. And at some point, very understandably, while I wanted to continue to have that element, it also became challenging to do. It became challenging to actually follow through on that and to arrange, and realistically, for something that wasn't a direct pay, like in return for my time and energy, I couldn't keep dedicating the same amount of energy and time it took to find people, arrange times that worked, record, then edit, then do all the things. So I adapted and also allowed myself to have my own voice where there's just the solo episodes, which I'm not afraid of. So that was an adaptation that I brought in, even though I still love having guests on. It just became a necessary part functionally, but also because there were other things I wanted to talk about in general that I knew I could just talk about. So that was one thing. And then we returned to the frequency. If memory serves me, it began as a fortnightly podcast, and then I wanted it to be weekly because I liked that frequency. And then at some point, life lifed in some way, probably at a couple of points, and it turned into a momentary fortnightly podcast again. And then last year, I had a short break. I think it was about 6 weeks or so, but I had a short break because I knew that I was revamping it in the sense of how I wanted to deliver it to the world, which we'll get to in the very next point. Maybe this is a good segue, but the point is flexibility and adaptability is really, really important to allow for you to show up consistently. Consistency doesn't mean just staying in the same thing all the time and calling that consistent. Consistency is paying attention to it and adapting to its needs and your needs as you go. So that was one thing. The segue into lesson number 4 is accessibility goes a long way. So one of those changes when I revamped the podcast last year was I knew that I wanted captions. on the videos. I knew I wanted to record every podcast episode visually. I was only using the video for guest episodes, and I was only doing audio. And while technically, yes, that added to my workload in terms of how to do it, I found ways to make it a lot easier, at least, because I really value accessibility, and I haven't done that. Sometimes I haven't done that well, and sometimes I just haven't done that perfectly. I still don't do it perfectly if we look at it all, but I haven't done that as well as I would have liked to, as well as I would like to still. And some of that's a capacity issue, but accessibility really does go a long way. It was important to me to have the subtitles, the captions on every video of the episode, because I want people to still be able to engage if they want to hear in their own way what it is that I'm sharing or that I'm talking about or whatever it is. That is a really, really important element of anything. and I would love to bring in Auslan sign language as well. And again, I don't know how exactly to do that. I know how to do it, but in terms of functionality and capacity for myself, but also the investment that would be required, it is just not there at the moment. But things like that, things that make it more accessible. There are a few other things for accessibility reasons that I would love to just have as a solid element of the podcast, of the show. But, and this is a bonus lesson, I guess, I'm allowing it to grow as my maybe not my capacity, but my functionality grows, right? I'm allowing it to grow. I'm not necessarily waiting to have it perfect before I get started. Again, another lesson. I'm not waiting to have it perfect before I get started, but it was really, really important to me to bring in accessibility as best I can in any way I could, because everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves an accessible life in whatever way we can do it. So it goes a long way. Even me, if we talk about captions, I'm not deaf or hard of hearing. I generally can hear well. And I watch TV with captions because I feel like I'm autistic, you guys, autistic ADHD. There's some processing that happens better when I can read while I'm listening, right? So, even for that, even for neurodivergence, for whatever reason, it's important and it goes a long way, but it goes a long way because it's where my values are. And again, I know I don't do it perfectly or quote, well enough yet, but it's important to do what you can do and recognize where you can do things is often a lot simpler than what we sometimes believe, only because it's hard when we don't know where to start or we don't have the information. So sometimes it's just getting the information, okay? So that is one thing. Accessibility goes a long way. And in other areas of my work, I've experienced that particularly this year, and it's been a really beautiful experience to really create things like that. So I want to continue that in all areas of my work. 5, lean into what you're good at. I'm good at yapping. I like yapping when it's about an area that interests me, which obviously well-being, leadership, communication does. I made my special interest my entire career. But also I love interviewing people. I love asking people questions. I love going deep into those things where I'm allowed to interview them, where it's not just someone random that I meet and then I interrogate them at all, but I enjoy interviewing them. And look, I'm not a trained journalist or anything like that, but I feel generally pretty fluent at it. So I lean into it. It's something that I enjoy, but it's also a valuable, not service to you guys. That feels weird to say, but it's a valuable option that I can then provide in my business. It's something I am good at. It's something I enjoy. And it provides value via the podcast in whatever format you absorb it in. So lean into what you're good at, especially when it benefits what your overall mission is, when it benefits whatever you're working towards. Sometimes that, because we're not going to get the path of least resistance in every area, but sometimes that difference, and at least having one area that is not the path of most resistance, where it is more of the path of least resistance, can make things feel like they're just a bit smoother running, and it can make a big difference to how we feel as we do it. So lean into what you're good at, because you never know what that can bring and what opportunities that can bring either. So really allow that for yourself. And number 6, for today at least, lead the conversation, but let others have their voice. This is a leadership thing. And even if you're not a leader as such, I don't do this perfectly. Let's be really, really clear. I don't do everything perfectly. I don't do anything perfectly. But these are lessons that I'm now more aware of. So lead the conversation, but let others have their voice. When I have guests on, I was going to say interviewees, interviewers, when I have guests on to interview them, and it's mostly a conversation, right? It's not even a formal interview ever. It's a conversation. It is my job. I see it as my job to make them feel comfortable, so I can lead the conversation, have some themes or sometimes specific questions, depending on what the person is comfortable with or needs. Have some themes or specific questions in mind and prepared so that I can lead the conversation. But also, because I'm not them and I don't have their brain, which is exactly why they're on as a guest, I need to then step aside and let them share and let them have their voice. And this is an important skill to continually cultivate. The more you lead, it's an important skill to continually cultivate the more you are around people. And we're never going to get it perfectly, and sometimes we'll make mistakes and sometimes we'll backslide. That's okay. But generally, as a leader in particular, you lead the conversation, you guide it, you set up the structure that makes people feel safe or gives them what they need, but also you then allow other people to have their voice, to share, to maybe ask the questions they want to ask, to share their perspectives if they have them, to share if they don't have an opinion or perspective on something. Whatever it is, it's just a skill. It's something that has become more apparent for me the more I've done these episodes, the more I've done this podcast. Again, not the expert here, but the more I've done this, the more I've more consciously been aware of going, oh yeah, I set up the structure, I lead so people feel safe and supported, and like there's a foundation that I'm creating for them, because it's not their job to necessarily, but then I want to hear what they have to say. That is the whole point. I want to hear what their perspective is. I want to understand what they have to say. I want to learn or inquire and be curious. So that's the 6 lessons for 6 years and 200 episodes of the Get Jasched podcast, which is really fun. I reckon we're going to get to the next 200 in less than 6 years. The rate we're going, this is good. And that 200 is not including the little info ones that rarely but occasionally pop up, and it's not including the meditation, the guided meditations or guided mindfulness practices in the subscription podcast. It is simply just 200 official episodes of Get Jasched as a podcast. Allow yourself to take things step by step. 200 is baby in a lot of contexts, but it's also massive in a lot of other contexts. I don't have the stats in front of me. I've never looked up, but I have heard it every now and then where the percentage of podcasts that don't continue beyond, I don't know, like single digit number of episodes is so massive. So, 200 is a lot and fairly consistently. So, let yourself have moments of acknowledgement for whatever you achieve as well, even if it doesn't feel that massive to you. It's important to acknowledge the milestones, maybe even share the milestones, whatever that is for you. But that's that for today's episode at the very least. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here with me, whether it's for all 200 or if it's more recently or whatever it is. Thank you for listening. That makes it a lot easier to keep going, knowing that there are people listening and that there are people who are getting something out of it. It means a lot as well, because I know I'm sitting here alone, especially for solo episodes. I know I'm sitting here alone in my office, in my home office, talking essentially to myself, but I'm really talking to you. It's not me just talking to hear my own voice. It's really to share something that I hope is valuable and useful. And while I haven't gone back through many of the early days, and I'm sure that there are some moments I'd love to delete, doesn't matter. We're here. And I am who I am now, possibly because of this learning process that it is of going through a project or a creative endeavor, and letting yourself learn, letting yourself develop. All of that's really important. But anyway, this. I'll stop with the cliche lines now, even though there's truth in cliche. That's what makes it cliche. Thank you for 200 episodes. How exciting. Look at me go. I'm so proud of me. Yeah, and I'll see you next week.